So you could literally just have a portable radio monitoring those regional talk groups. Or you could have a counselette, which is what you're going to see today, and how that works integrated into your councils in order so you could patch into your operational channels during an event, either patching the statewide calling or the regional channel in your region into your PSAP to get it to your people on the street. So I'm going to have Melvin come up here and quickly describe how one of those levels, which is the counselette, works and how it, before we do the demo, so you have a basic understanding of the level you can do by using just a simple counselette to access those regional talk groups. So I'll have Melvin come up, and then I'm going to introduce Rhonda Mckibben, is the project manager, assistant project manager that works with me in DPS. She's responsible for all of our training of our PSAPs, all 5 of our PSAPs across the state. And she's also responsible for development of our internal policy for the way our agents and DCI and D&E, fire marshals, state troopers operate and use our portion of the system. She needs to be responsible to have that all done by July, right?
You bet. Okay.
So with that given, I'm going to put Melvin and describe the technology, and then Rhonda will run the demo when we call the counties on site.
Probably have to get this out so folks can see this. I'll put it right back in. Got it? Yep. Oh, good. That's me. There you go. Sean, can you take the Isicsb? There you go, perfect. Okay, when we look at a dispatch center, here's an example of dispatch center. You have all your networking equipment that sits in the back room. You have switches, you have routers, you have conventional interfaces, you have controls, all sorts of stuff that sits in, an equipment rack in the back of your dispatch center. Attached to this, switching equipment, the Ethernet switches, you have all your operator positions, okay? So in a normal dispatch center, you have computers with microphones, speakers, and all that stuff so that you can have access to all your talk groups throughout the state and your operations. So these connect into the switches, and the switches connect to the routers, and then the routers connect into the Isics cloud. And that's all that backhaul, the microwave backhaul that interconnects everything together. The whole idea is that every dispatch center eventually makes it to the core, okay? What we're demoing here today is not that, because there's other ways to access the system at a different level. So in this slide here, what I'm showing is we have control, we call them consolettes, some people call them control stations. There's different ways of skinning this down for different capabilities. In this case, it's kind of what we have here, except we only have one, but we have what's in essence a radio on a tray, kind of like a mobile that has a power supply and it has an antenna connection on it. Some folks get the watered down version, which takes the mobile, puts it on a tray with the power supply. When you get a consolette, there's more capabilities and features that come associated with it. In this case, what we show is the consolette has an interface box that allows this desk set to be interfaced to this. Some dispatch centers, what they'll do is that they'll use these to dispatch, or they won't use this and they'll just have a sort of a boom microphone that sits in front of them that they can key and talk and switch channels on the radio themselves. The whole principle here is that a small dispatch center that cannot afford something as complex as this can go into something that's more like this. In this case, we show a control station combiner, so it allows us to combine all the antenna systems into a single antenna. And all this does is that now the dispatcher has access to the system over the air, just like any mobile radio does, any portable radio does. And the distinction is that the dispatcher becomes a radio user, whereas in a full dispatch center mode in here, the dispatcher is not a radio user. They have a lot more preemptive capabilities and a lot of things they can do to make sure that the field has what they need. Whereas when you're running in this mode, what you're doing is you're in essence competing for resources just like anybody else is out in the field. But it allows you to have access to it. And for example, in the state of Illinois, for our statewide system, all the different counties have these consolettes. Some of them were granted through grant money and whatnot. And what they do is their small dispatch centers have this, and that's how they're able to have access to the statewide system. So everybody does it a little bit differently, but that's what we're demoing today is, in essence, this consolette. They even have the desk set here as well, but this might as well be a mobile radio or even a portable. The point being that it's still accessing the system over the air. And since the system is active today, and there's coverage today in the metro area, part of the demo is going to be to really go beyond this area and go through different sections of what's active in the system to be able to show how we can communicate with each other through the interoperability channels. Yes?
Would the dispatch center also have the option to console under control station?
Correct. So one of the things you can do with here, just like you have a desk set over here, folks can have a sort of like a front end, if you will, what this provides a front end, but you can have a computer system that provides that front end that makes it feel like you have all of this, right? But it provides a different type of, a more user-friendly type of user interface, but you're still going to be limited by how many radios you have and just still being over the air. But you can still do that. That is not uncommon. Correct. Correct.
No, but if you back up to the other slide, if you have an MCC 7500 dispatch center and you hook into the system this way, you have more capability because you're wired versus wireless, correct?
Correct. So, for example, one of the biggest hassles, or I don't want to say hassles, one of the biggest limitations that could present a problem is if you have an officer that's talking on the radio, and for whatever reason he's still talking on the radio and there's still stuff going on, and he's not releasing that talk group. So the dispatcher, when the dispatcher is talking here, the dispatcher can preempt. She can talk, the dispatcher can talk over you and still have access to everybody else in the field because for whatever reason, either you're sitting on you're keying the radio or something, but it allows them to be able to preempt you and be able to reach folks out in the field. That's one example.
But if you look at the over-the-air side of it, the other slide, the dispatcher doesn't have preemption capability.
Correct.
That talk group's tied up, you're just tied up.
Correct, because the dispatcher, and when you look in this mode, the dispatcher is another radio user just like the officer out in the field. And the other thing is, when you're connected, you can have a whole ton of talk groups here and have access to them, including conventional resources, because you have access to all of the talk groups that are being allowed in your dispatch center, whereas in this configuration, it's a talk group per consolette. So if you have 3 users, you have 3 consolettes, those users can have access only to a talk group at a time.
So back at the other slide, if a dispatch center has that MCC 7500, they could run not only the Isics platform, but could they run their own local VHF
Yes, they can.
repeater as well?
Yeah, because like here we call them conventional channel gateways. So that you can connect your, as a matter of fact, we're doing some of that with the LEA channels right now. We're bringing in them through the conventional channel gateways, and it become a resource that's available. So your dispatcher can talk to the VHF or UHF, whatever is over here, and they can also talk to all the trunk talk groups as well.
So if your dispatch center is set up like this already, you just add a site router, so to speak, into the Ethernet switch, and you have all the Isics top groups
Correct.
into your console.
Correct. So this interface is all specific to Motorola. So in situations like yours, it's not uncommon to fall back into this mode where your dispatch equipment becomes the front end to all the radios that sit in the back.